All right, guys, now let's look at the following things. Let's clear this. Joining strings together, which is known as concatenation. Indexing, which is to get the position of a character from a string. Slicing, which is to get several characters from a string at once. So we're going to look at these three things. Let's start with concatenation. So two strings can be combined or concatenated using the plus operator. So let's say we have string 1 equals to abra and string 2 equals to cadabra. Now, if we say print, let's do a print statement. String 1 plus string 2. If we print this out, you see we get abracadabra without any spaces because we're just adding the strings directly. You could still add it together by saying, add it together to create a new variable. So let's say we create a variable called magic string and we set it equals to string 1 plus string 2. Then we could print magic string right here. And if we run the code, it's still the same thing that comes out, abracadabra. So now let's create a string first name equals to James. James last name equals to Bond. And let's print first name plus last name. If we do this and we run the code, you see we get James Bond printed out, but it's all matched up together because there's no space. One way to do it is to add a space. So we could say we add a string here and we add here, then we could say this string is the space. So add this space in between them. So we're adding three strings together. One is just a space. So if we run this code now, you see we get James Bond with a space included in it. So we can always create a variable called full name and set it equals to all this. And then we just print full name. And then if we run this code, it's the same thing that comes out here. Now let's look at string indexing. Let's say we have flavor equal to apple pie. And then if we say flavor this, right? So we're trying to get this. Let me print this out. What do you think the result is going to be? You could just try to guess. Okay, let me run it and let's see what the results are. Let me just comment out this other print statements. And if I run this now, you see we get P. I know you must be wondering what the heck, why do we get P rather than A? It's because in some programming language, like most other programming language, counting starts from 0. So basically you get A as 0, P as 1, this other P as 2, L as 3, E as 4, the space as 5, and so on. So if I say print 7, we're going to get I. So if I run this, you see I shows up here. So that's basically how you use indexes in programming language. Always know it starts from 0 and it goes on. Let's look at some errors we can get. Let's say we do flavor and we go for an index which is larger than our string because you see it ends at 8. So if we run this, we are going to get an out of bounds error. So out of range, sorry. So if you see it tells you string index out of range, it tells us here. So you get that. Then if you do a negative one, what we are going to get is the last element in the string. So if you do a negative one, you can get the last element in the string. So if we run this, we get an E for the E in the pie. So if you do a negative 2, same thing, you're going to get the second to the last element. If you run this, you get another I here. So and so on and so forth. Now let's look at slicing, right? We've looked at adding strings together. We've looked at indexing, like getting the index of strings. Now let's look at slicing. So we could say in slicing is kind of like indexing on, but the thing is you are cutting a part off from the string. That's why it's called slicing. So for example, if I say print, then what happens is you give a starting point and an ending point of your slice. So I want to get a slice from, let's say, flavor. So I'll say print flavor, and what's my starting point? Let's say I want to start at point 3 and I want to go up to, but not including. So that's the thing with Python. So point 3 to 5. So when I say this, I'm basically saying start at point 3, which is L, go up to 5, which is the space, but do not include 5. So 3 and 4 basically. So if I print this, I'm supposed to get LE. So if I run this, you see I get LE down here. Let me just comment out this other stuff we are not using currently. So now let me take this out so we know what we're working with as a guide. So now let's say we wanna, let me just say we create a slice start variable, which is, let's say we want to slice out just the pie section. As we can see here, P is the 6th one and E is the 8th one. So we could easily say slice from 6 up to, now we want the 8th one. So we can say up to 9th, which is at the, go up to 9, but without including 9. So if we do this, we say print slice and we run this, we get the entire pie. But here's the weird thing about slicing. If we slice with elements which are non-existent, right? Like if I want to slice, let's say from 0 to the 10th element, we know the 9th element doesn't exist. It's not going to throw an error. Same if I go like beyond 0, it's not going to show an error. It's just going to tell you, give you an empty space, basically. So if I do this, you see it just gives out apple pie because we're slicing from the 0th element up until the 10th. So what happens is there's an empty space here, just that we can't see it. But there's an empty space here. It's the same thing like if I say slice from 9 to 10, if I run this, you just see a blank space here. It doesn't throw an error. So just keep that in mind. If I say I want to slice, let's say I want to slice out pi, I could say from the 6th element and I leave it blank like this, which means go right up to the end. When you leave it blank like this, if you leave it blank in front, you're basically saying just make a copy of this, which means you're slicing everything, right? You're slicing from here to here. When you leave the front section blank, it means start from the top. And when you leave the back section blank, it means go up to the end. So if I run this slice 3, you see it prints out the entire apple pie. If I run this, you see it prints out the entire apple pie. But now, if let's say I say from the 0th element, want to print apple. No, sorry, want to print just pi. I could say, or let's say want to print just pi. I could easily say from the 6th element up until the end. If I print this out, we're gonna get pi here. So for this. So just so you know, and so on and so forth, you can slice any portion of the string you want. Now let's look at string methods, right? Let's look at string methods. Create a new file. Now let me create a new file. I'll call it string methods. String methods just mean string functions. Like I told you earlier, we're going to look more into what functions are and how they work. The gist of it is string methods are like methods, functions you can run on strings. So remember we looked at the print, we've been looking at the print function. Now let's look at functions you can run on the string. So let's say we have a string, let's say somebody's name, which is, so let's say we have the string Jean-Luc Picard. And if we say len, which is to get the length, right? You get the length of a string. This is a function like how we have print to put something out in the console. This will give you the length of anything. So Let me say length of string should be equal to the length of the name, right? Let's say you want to get how many letters are in the name. So you run the length function. So if I print, so if I print this out, so I'm printing this variable. If I print this out, we get 15, which means there are 15 letters. There are 15 letters in the name. We can count it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Sorry, 15 characters, not letters, characters, because even the space, the white space is a character, the hyphen is a character. So let's say 15 characters are in the string. So now let's look at another string method, right? There's a string method we could do with the string. It's like, let's say I could just do something like this. Hi, right? And I can run a string method directly on top of it. I mustn't declare variables to run it. I can just say dot lower. Now this is a string method, right? That you can run on strings. So if I print this out so that we can see exactly what we're doing. If I run this, you see we get high. It doesn't change. This lower is supposed to make the letters or the characters to be lowercase. Let's say it was uppercase high like this. If I run this, you still get a lowercase. Or there's also a function for making things uppercase. Is lower case. So you can have a lowercase like this, and if you say upper, it's going to convert this to an uppercase. So if I run this, you see converts it to an uppercase. So you can do that. You can still now do it with name. Let's say we can say print the name dot upper, and now we are able to have Jean-Luc Picard in all uppercases. So, or same thing you could do with lower and so on. Unlike len, which is a general method, right? Length is a general method, same as print. The upper and and lower methods are dependent methods, right? So they are dependent on the string. That's why before you run them, you must do a period. You can't just run them on their own. They are like, you can just say lower like this. It won't be recognized. So they are string dependent methods. So unlike len and print, which are general functions, upper and lower are dependent functions, which means they depend on something. Now here they depend on strings. These are string dependent methods. So you can run them on the string. That's why you run them after the period. So you do period and you run the methods on them. And that's all we had for now. See you in the next one.